I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Today we have Lane Wood on the show. He's a friend of mine, and we actually traveled to Africa together, to Ethiopia, when he was working with Charity Water and Soma Water. He's also worked with companies like Warby Parker, quite the resume. And Lane has just gone through a huge transformational year, and he talks about coming out as gay for the first time ever publicly sharing this story. He talks about the sequence of events and what started kind of this coming out of the closet. And the more I get to thinking about closets and coming out, I realize we all have our own types of closets. And a lot of times the idea of coming out is just really about having a difficult conversation with yourself and with others. And a closet is really no place to live. So this is by far one of my favorite conversations. I know I've said that before, but listen, and you'll understand why. And I'm so grateful that Lane was so brave to come and share his story. Here's Lane. Before we get started, I want to tell you about my partners at Design Pickle. You know when you're in a pickle because you need a design, but you don't have the time or maybe even the skill to do it yourself. Many of us have been there. Design Pickle has been a lifesaver for me. Here's how they're set up. You pay a flat rate monthly fee, and you're given a dedicated designer for all of your needs. You heard that right. Unlimited graphic designs, unlimited requests, and the first 14 days are risk-free. You get a full refund if you cancel in the first 2 weeks. Why Not Now listeners like yourself get 30% off their first month at Design Pickle. You can go to designpickle.com/why not now to redeem the offer. For me, the process has been painless and ego-free. In fact, many of the posts you're seeing on my social media channels were created by my buddies at Design Pickle, specifically Jacob at Design Pickle. That's what's cool, is that you get a dedicated designer. I'm on a first-name basis with my designer. A mentor once said to me, just because you can doesn't always mean you should. Do what you're uniquely qualified to do. Design Pickle helps me do just that. Go to designpickle.com/why not now to redeem the offer. We tackle the most taboo topics on the Why Not Now show. Oftentimes, you're hearing guests share things they've never shared before. In the spirit of things we don't typically talk about, you should know that the Why Not Now show is supported by Poo-Pourri. Yep, the original before you go toilet spray. It's magic. My friends at Poo-Pourri have literally taken the smell out of you-know-what. This pure blend of essential oils stops bathroom odor before it begins. Visit poopourri.com, and Why Not Now listeners get 20% off with code WHYNOTNOW. That's all one word. Also, you can now get Poo-Pourri at Bed Bath & Beyond. Lane Wood, welcome to the show, buddy. How you doing?
So good. It's so good to hear your voice.
Likewise. Oh, Facebook it's awesome at times, but it just isn't enough. So this will partially be a catch up for you and I.
Yeah. Online is insufficient for friends, so I'm glad to get to chat with you.
Absolutely. So, diving right in, tell us about a time when you had to ask yourself, why not now? And we'll talk it through and we'll kind of dissect and talk through that bridge that you had to build between going from dreaming and thinking to taking action and doing.
Yeah. Okay. So, if you've been following me online, I think any of my friends would expect me to say that this one particular moment recently has been the why not now moment. But I think really for me, as I look back across, the last few years and how things have built up, that around a year and a half ago, I was confronted with the most mundane ever of situations where I went to the doctor's office and was just confronted with the truth, with numbers, that I was much more overweight than I thought I was. Right? We've all been there. We've put on a few pounds here or there, but this one little moment that I wasn't expecting to have in a doctor's office in a safe environment where someone looked me in the eyes and told me the truth really put me up against this reality that I had to take a look at my life. I was living in San Francisco at the time. I was a CMO at a startup there. We had raised quite a bit of money. From the outside, everything looked really good for my life story. If you were watching online or if you just looked at my LinkedIn, I'd had a really interesting, successful career path getting to where I was, and I lived in this really nice neighborhood in San Francisco and had this cushy job and knew all the right people. And I had created this environment or this aura around myself that everything is great. Lane is successful. Lane's doing all the right things. But when I went to the doctor's office and I realized that I'd just been lying to myself about just this basic element of personal health, which was I was just unhealthy in about every way, I was confronted with this opportunity and I didn't know what it would do at the time, but really I had to look at my life and go, oh yeah, you don't have any clothes that fit. You are squeezing into t-shirts and your blazers don't fit. You're not going out to events because you don't have a jacket. And it had been hard for me to actually admit these little things about myself. But as I decided in that moment that I was going to decide to be healthy, I didn't know exactly what I was signing up for and agreeing to, and how that moment of saying yes to my own personal health would lead to some of the most momentous decisions of my life that a year later, I feel like my life looks completely different. And we'll have some time to unpack it, I think. But from that moment, I walked away from the doctor. I was really kind of bummed because I hadn't been healthy. I hadn't exercised. I hadn't eaten right. I was going and eating at a bar around the corner from my house by myself pretty regularly and getting a hamburger and drinking a few beers. And I just become very, very unhealthy. I hired a personal trainer. I was lucky to have the opportunity to do that and started day by day getting in shape, losing some weight, getting healthy. And during that process, I know it sounds mundane, but during that process, not only did I realize that I was unhealthy, but I was supremely unhappy. And there was nothing fulfilling about my job. I had been faking my way through that. There was no way I was affected about it. I didn't really have great friendships. I was really isolated in a lot of what I was doing. I didn't love living in San Francisco. And as I began to get healthy in one area of my life, it began to shine a light on all these other areas that were really in need of massive change, that I had for a long time just created this narrative that everything was okay. Even to myself, it was just such a self-deceptive way of living that, in just a few short months, I quit my job, lost all the weight. I moved out of San Francisco down to LA without really telling anybody. I, at 34 years old, came out as gay and got cast on a television show, got work that I wanted to, moved to the beach, and started actually living a life that I really wanted to and being healthy.
Wow. And that all was sparked by a doctor's office visit and the reality of some hard numbers kind of in your face that then open the door to all of these other things eventually. But it's such an interesting story to hear how you got to the change. It's not, I wouldn't have expected to have heard that things played out this way. And was there a moment where, after you're at the doctor's office and you're hearing something that maybe you hadn't realized, and we've all been there, and it's kind of this wake-up call of, oh, I've been lying to myself a little bit, not even a little bit, a lot of it. Was it then kind of digging around, what else have I been not telling myself the truth about? Or how did you arrive at all these other changes, especially quitting your job, huge deal, moving, coming out as gay, and I'm seeing, certain things kind of unfold and knowing you as a friend, but I haven't really heard the in-between parts, and I think that's what's so important and so critical. It's like the devil's in the details, right? How does this happen?
I've been writing a lot about this, and I think it's one of the most important questions, because I think if we can understand, for someone like myself, how this happens, or how this has happened for those of us, that even the people that you've had on the show before, that we can really grab onto something meaningful. For me, the little context for me is that I grew up in a farm town in Oklahoma, and it was a really, really small farm town, 1,500 people. It's called Carnegie, Oklahoma. It sounds really prestigious, but it is not. And I grew up without a lot of exposure to different ideas, to different opportunities. There wasn't a really big understanding of what the world looked like or what I could do in life, and not a lot of curiosity. It was just whatever's right in front of you. So when I look at, this many years later, that sort of upbringing is a lot of what I have found myself trying to get out of. And if there's one thing that I think after getting out of the doctor's office that has been my saving grace, is I decided that it was okay to just be insanely curious and allow myself to ask the questions that I had been fighting off for a long time. We don't ask ourselves questions a lot of times because we just don't want to know the answer. Why am I unhealthy? Why doesn't that shirt fit? To why am I scared of going on these dates? Why am I alone all this time? And I think for me, as I look at, step by step by step by step, this is a year of unfolding. It felt like it happened all at once, but across a year, as I got in shape, it cleared up this space in my mind where, I was allowed to be confident. I was starting to like myself more and to trust myself more. And as I began to do that, I began to ask more questions. If I can change this dramatically in this area of my life, what else can happen? And once you get into this mode of accepting whatever the answer might be, as you start asking questions and being willing to make the changes necessary to get yourself to that end, I think things can unfold really rapidly. In a course of, I'd been looking at moving to LA. Get this, I was going to move to LA. I was debating it. I was flying down back and forth to San Francisco, deciding what was I going to do. And my lease was up at my apartment, and the timing just really sucked. And so I just ended up signing my lease for another year, and immediately I regretted it. And I got an email 2 weeks after I had signed this digitally that said that they still hadn't received my signature. Even though I had the confirmation email, the building system had rejected it somehow. And I was presented this opportunity to leave and not have any repercussions. And I literally called U-Haul, rented a truck, started packing up a van, and drove away the next day. So I think once you become, maybe this is just me, but I had this opportunity, and I don't know, it just gets exciting once you're able to say yes to it. And if you can allow yourself to be in that flow, you can find yourself in some really healthy positions in a really fast fashion. I don't know if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And it's just having interviewed Billy Corgan, he made a comment about, we have this path, and the universe, God, whoever you believe in. I have a friend who calls it potato chip, whatever. It has this path for you. And although it's not safe from human tampering. So we get in our own way often, but if we try not to. So in a way, I think the U-Haul, the universe not having that email in the system, whatever, is what you're saying, what you're talking about. It's kind of listening and being along for the ride at some point. But as I'm hearing you, it sounds like with the graduation of, oh, okay, I'm overweight, and the desire for more health, you just kind of graduated into these next steps and layers of your life. And you posted something on Facebook that it was a quote. I'm not sure who wrote the quote. You may be aware, but you said your new life is going to cost you your old one.
Oh, I remember that.
That's good. That's good. But it's in that one sentence, it goes to show you were ready for a 180. You were ready to really change. And so let's break it down. So before we hopped on, Lane, I was online and I stumbled across this TED Talk by Ash Beckman. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but she talks about closets. And she said, we all have closets that we need to come out of. Many of us have lived in several closets. And my closet is no different than yours. She goes on, she talks about how a closet is no place for a person to live. And really all that a closet is a hard conversation. And it's scary, we hate it, but it has to be done. Zooming in, what does that mean to you? When you say, I came out as gay, literally, that had to have been a why not now moment. And it built clearly by what you just described, but what did that look like? Was that a conversation? Was that, what happened? What was your first step in coming out?
Wow. I guess to allow some context to understand, how I ended up where I was, as, when you grow up in rural Oklahoma, you are, by default a part of the church, the Christian church, very, I would say Trump-land, Fox News, Christian upbringing. And I actually went to school to become a pastor for a little while. And I was a pastor for a little while. I was a pastor to college students in Tennessee, in New York City, and then in Austin. And so I actually spent a lot of time working for and inside of the church. And so a lot of my worldview early on was shaped by those experiences. And inside of that world, being gay just was not an option, especially in leadership, especially with the spotlight being shined on you. And so for me, even though, now I can look back and understand in hindsight how I was spending all of this energy creating a false narrative about who I was so that it was acceptable to other people. I did spend, the previous years before I actually came out, like coming out of other closets, which was, stepping away from my faith and that expectation from my family and, these groups of friends and people that I've known for a long time, and stepping away from their expectations to be a leader in a thing that I had no attachment to anymore, and being very definitive about that and moving away from it. So that was a big step for me, a few years ago. I was in Mexico and screaming out in the ocean to, whatever God is out there saying, I'm done being this guy. And so I look at that as one of the, first major coming out moments, for me. But as I look at, just this last year of moving to LA and finding myself in a position where I looked around and there was nobody watching me. In San Francisco, I had a bit of an audience because I was, in that crowd. And I think if you've ever spent any time in the tech industry in San Francisco, there's a lot of posturing and a lot of,
Sure.
competition.
Especially, and not to cut you off, but I think it's important to know you've worked for some of the biggest companies that I've had crushes on. I mean, Warby Parker, Charity Water. It's just, you've definitely been in that world pretty deep early on. So I think
Yeah.
it does. Your point about being in LA when no one was watching it really strikes home with me. I think that's maybe we have to remove ourselves sometimes from our physical geographic situation in order to come out of our closet. But carry on. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just think it was important to know.
No, it's great. It is of note because, I've built this sort of expectation from the people that have known me. I'm the guy that, did all the charity stuff, the social enterprise stuff, and with two really amazing organizations that even brought, us working with Soma Water a few years ago to go to Ethiopia together. I'm really incredibly grateful for this opportunity that a small town Oklahoma kid has had to run alongside some of the most amazing entrepreneurs, philanthropists, charity workers, social enterprise entrepreneurs there are on the planet. But here I am, I do want to have impact, and I have spent so much of my life as a pastor, as a charity person, like helping other people. And a lot of people in my field end up with this sort of martyr complex of it. It's all about other people and never taking the time to take care of yourself, which is precisely what I had done. It'd been a long time since I'd actually looked at my own life and said, are you happy? Are you healthy? Are you effective in the work that you're trying to do? And I definitely was not by the time I finished my time in San Francisco. And so I find myself in LA, and I'm looking around and there's no expectation. The tech industry has disappeared. People really don't know that I'd moved. I didn't tell many people. So here I am in Venice Beach and like this blank slate that I can start writing on again. And I was really cautious as to what to start saying and doing. And as a part of that, I finally started having to listen to that voice that I'd been ignoring for forever, clouding it with all the work and all the busyness of my life in San Francisco. And when things got still and quiet, I was like, oh my gosh, there's this person here that I haven't paid attention to in a while, and he has got some stuff to say. And one of those things was you are definitely not a heterosexual man. And if you want to be healthy in your relationships, you're going to have to address this. And it scared the living daylights out of me. I cannot tell you how much anxiety those early days of switching preferences on dating apps to like, at first it was guys and girls. Like I'll just like start matching and talking to people. And I'd wake up the next morning having only just sent messages back and forth to some guys. And I'd wake up the next morning going, oh my gosh, I'm going to get found out. Somebody saw me. They're going to tell everybody. And that was such like a wrong way. But I didn't know how to not be anxious about it. It'd been this long time in the making of, coming to grips with this part of the conversation for me. And,
did you just one day decide to switch your preferences, or did something happen for you to say, okay, I'm going to take the step and actually change my my digital footprint a little bit as it related to the dating apps?
It was easier, right? Because
sure.
If I'd go out with friends in Venice, it wasn't like, hey, here's my might be gay friend Lane that, you should meet. Nothing was happening. And I wasn't, going out by myself in West Hollywood. It was this easy first step that maybe after like a drink or two made it a little bit easier. But the first time having had some even online conversation connection, it was immediately just evident that I was doing something right. I didn't know what it was going to end up being. There was no plan of like, this is my first step in coming out and letting everybody know. It really wasn't that. The decision was, I'm not going to say no to this just because I've always said no to this. Why am I saying no? There's no reason not to explore, and found myself really having this new experience of, oh, okay, this feels different. This is interesting, which, finally led to, it is such a, 2016 story, but, finally led to me meeting up with someone and going out for drinks. And when I remember saying yes to that, of like, I'm going to be outside of my home in public where I can be seen. I was thinking of all the exit strategies that I could have from that restaurant, going, oh, if someone sees me, what are all the excuses I'm going to have? But even though every step of this process really was it was actually really painful. It was, am I really going to do this? The anxiety, the like, what do I do? Every time I made a step forward, it just reinforced that I was at least moving in the right direction. Even if it wasn't obvious, the end destination, that I was at least moving in a direction that was healthy. And there was this moment where I was like, oh, okay, I've been laughing at everybody for my entire life for having emotions around the people that they're dating. And like, this idea of love, honestly, I told myself and my friends that I just either was incapable of feeling love or falling in love. Like something in my brain was broken, or that it just wasn't meant for me. I just didn't know how to relate to people that were, happily in these relationships. And I'd find myself, 3 months into a relationship with an amazing, amazing girl, and they would be way more into the relationship that I was. And I had no sympathy for their position in the relationship. So, as I was learning and clumsily navigating a new world, I felt like the 16, 17-year-old kid that was trying to figure out how to deal with, oh, this is what that is.
So in hearing you say, you didn't have a plan, which I'm sure, as much as we all like to have control of things, it's good to hear that. But what your plan was you weren't going to say no. So that in a way was a strategy. That was a plan. And it sounds like you were listening to your kind of internal GPS. Am I going the right way? Okay, I'm going to keep going this way.
You're so right. I think, I don't know what it is about me and what it is about those of us that get a little adventurous, but me moving out of my hometown, going to school, it was, the first school I went to was Bible college, but then moving to Tennessee to get a degree in music business, and then moving to New York City and then Austin. And it's become this thing for me to where if I feel like I'm stuck, if I'm not moving forward, if there's this, stagnant feeling about where I am in life, I'm pretty keen to not stay there. And when you say, there's this, I just don't want to say no, that is true. It's just that if I continue to say no, I'm going to stay in the same place. And once you find that like way forward and you feel the wind in your sails, it's encouraging enough to just keep going. And if I can find that element, regardless of whether it's this conversation that we're having or whether it's professional, then it becomes a whole lot easier to step into it, even though it's not one of these, okay, here's my 5-year strategy to be this person or to have this job, or, I think I'm addicted to momentum, and I'm really sensitive to when things aren't moving forward. And, I think this is a good example. This story of mine is a good example of, how I can just pick up and move to LA without telling anybody, or, how in a year everything is different, but maybe there's more people than me. Maybe you feel this way too, that feeling of just being stuck is one of the most despairing feelings for someone that, either, wants to have an impact in the world, wants to know that their life, matters outside of their own space. And as a career, I love finding those opportunities for myself, for the companies that I work with, for my friends that are founders, to just keep moving forward.
No, I agree. And I think, we're aligned and have a lot of similar just kind of ways about us. I know I get reckless and kind of self-destructive if I start to feel like I've lost momentum, or if I'm spinning my wheels, and it's not a good look for me at all. So I know what you mean. It's so if we go back, and I don't mean to be so literal about such an emotional decision and experience, and I don't have a sensitivity chip missing, I promise. But I think it will help others too to understand. So your family and your friends and your colleagues, your career, how did that all come into play? I'm sure that there was, first it was baby steps in your own world. You kind of had this incubator of sorts where you set yourself up in a place that it wasn't, everybody was just staring in the fishbowl. But as you became more comfortable with your own navigation and where you're headed, then did you start sharing with people that you were gay? How did that play out?
It was funny. I was about 2 months into dating a guy for the first time, and no one knew, none of my friends. And it was a very secret sort of existence, but like in that like incubator mode, like it was really great. One of my best friends who lives here in Venice, and he and I would go running on the beach every day, just have really great talks. He was on a dating app with one of his friends who was gay and saw my face come up, and he asked me like, "Hey, saw this. What is that?" And it scared me to death, but then it was the first real time that I'd ever had that conversation with someone. And it turned out to be one of my like most trusted friends, which I'm really fortunate for. But that first conversation gave me a sense of, I can survive this conversation. Okay. I knew that my surrounding group of people they're progressive. They're not how I grew up. No one was going to be anything but happy for me. But it's one of those conversations you can't take back, right? And so, I was in this mode of, what do I tell people? Am I bi? Am I gay? I need to figure this out first before I'm just like writing a Medium post and telling the world, what's going on.
Yeah.
And so I would start having these one-on-one conversations as I'd see people that I cared about and tell them that I was, dating guys, and that I was really happy, and that, it was really clumsy at first, but everybody was really excited. And so as I began to have more and more of those conversations, it was just, cat's out of the bag. I'm not holding it close to my chest anymore. The next hurdle was, okay, I'm going to have to tell my family. And I broke up with someone just because I hadn't had that conversation with my family. I wasn't convinced that I was going to have that conversation with my family. My dad's a pastor. My family is incredibly conservative. And I, because I grew up, in the same way of thinking, I know what they think about this. And I know how devastating it was going to be for them to learn that they have a gay son.
And you broke up with them because you thought that would be easier than having to have the conversation? Is that why you broke up with the person?
Well, I needed to just be sure. And I was,
Okay.
I started to, I'm dragging this person into a like unknown territory. It was starting to become unfair for them, because I really hadn't made the decision whether I was going to actually fully come out to my parents. And people outside of my own personal network. And it was just unfair to ask someone to live in sort of a secret part of my life. It's unhealthy for me. It's unhealthy for anybody else. And so, yeah. And I didn't want to make that decision based on, this person. I wanted to make a decision to really, come out to my family and my extended network, because that's what I wanted to do. And that's who I was. And it wasn't an emotional, this is a fun relationship, like I'm just going to go for it. But I remember going home to Oklahoma, and I was so nervous. I couldn't sleep. I didn't sleep the entire time that I went home, and I was debating the whole time whether or not I was going to tell them, and had no clue what they're going to do. But I'm there with my family, my sisters and their kids, and it's summertime, and we're swimming in the pool, and I couldn't bring myself to ruin everybody's time together. And so I decided I wasn't going to hijack our family time and make it all about me. And I waited until I got to the airport. On the way to fly back to LA, I called both of my sisters and said, "Hey, love you guys. love your families. I need to tell you something. I've been dating guys. It's going to continue. And I want to have this conversation in person, but I also didn't want to hijack our family time. Parents don't know. Give me some time to figure it out. Both my sisters, I love my sisters. They're awesome. They were, I think confused and, it definitely it confronts a part of their belief system that, they really don't have a language for yet. But they were good and they were encouraging. And then, a couple of days later, I had to pick up the phone and call my parents. And I know that my family will listen to this as well. And since they will hear this, I do want them to know that, I have so much respect for them, and I know what it's like to be in their shoes and their belief system. But as I told them, it was devastating to them, as it was really, really hard, and I knew it would be. And so, it was a phone call, and then I honestly wouldn't see them for another 8 months, and so it was a lot of awkward back and forth. Don't know how to have this conversation moments with my family, but I think everybody's trying. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Wow. And there are so many parts of that just entire last part of what you just described, from your friend who, props to your friend for asking you and opening up that door. I think that the friend that you were running with, who saw your profile come up on the dating app or whatever, or had heard about it. Because in a way it was an open invite to kind of get the ball rolling. I don't know if you see it that way, but it's interesting how such a difficult conversation, especially a first one, can be. I see that as almost a move of compassion and curiosity, but who knows? But then, but to your family, there's something you posted on Facebook, and it was so heartfelt and well written. And at the end of kind of describing your last year, you said, "And for those of you out there that grew up with me and went to church with me, that didn't think you knew a gay person, turns out you have all along. Hi." I found that just so interesting, and what a soft way of saying, I'm me still. I'm the same person that you've always known. And so I imagine, looking at what's happened in the last 12 months plus of our political season and the bubbles we live in, and I talk about that quite a bit on the show, with these conservative versus liberal, urban versus rural kind of bubbles, and having just moved from one to the other. A very progressive Southern California. I'm using progressive in air quotes because that's actually a label that anything can be progressive. But Oklahoma, your history, and actually your relationship with faith. I bet there are a lot of people who are in the same shoes you were months ago. So, what would you say to them?
So that post that you referred to is, I wrote that 2 days after the election, because it was so disheartening for so many people in my world, and I know that for people that are in the LGBT community, or even in my position, a few years ago, and that are struggling or trying to figure out how to maneuver in a new world and space they don't know very well. It was just a really disheartening time. And I saw so much negativity, and as we still do online. And I don't know why I wanted to say something encouraging and positive into the space, to be vulnerable, to reveal a part of myself. And up until that point, nobody outside of, if you hadn't seen me in person, you didn't know. And I just took to Facebook, and I wrote that post that, explaining, is coming out to a broader community. But that's the whole point, Amy, is that I think I know what it feels like to be, I know what it feels like to not know how to go about this conversation, to feel like you're stuck, to feel like you can't, to feel whether it's this or anything else. But I've learned that it doesn't have to be all at once. That the things that you say yes to are the smaller self-care things that get you to the bigger bigger opportunities to be honest with your story. It's encouraging to know that if you tell this story to anyone that's, under 25, I think the reaction is, oh yeah, coming out's still a thing. Because,
Such a good point.
the world has changed so much in the time that I was, in high school. Even for people that I assume are, in my old high school in Carnegie, Oklahoma. But I'm not the best at knowing how everybody's story is different. And it has seemed to work out. Here's the real thing. If I were to have come out when I was a kid, I would have been put in one of those like Pray the Gay Away camps that would have had me going through therapy the rest of my life, trying to, counter that. Who knows what would have happened? So I love my family. I am grateful for the way that I was raised, and I'm okay with the fact that I didn't come out until later in life, because it would have had some interesting repercussions for me. I'm okay. You can help me pull I haven't had this conversation out loud, very much. So you can help me pull this out if I can be of help, if there's anything that I can say,
No, you're doing an awesome job. Just thank you for, I think it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it. Thank you for being brave and vulnerable and honest, on coming on the show. It's in having this conversation with me. I am grateful for that. But also, like you said, whether it's this or anything else, there's so many different types of closets. And whether your closet is you have an illness that you haven't told anyone about yet, or you're falling out of love and you want a divorce, or you're falling in love and you want to tell someone, you're just done something wrong and you need, who knows what it is, but we need to have more of these conversations, and understand kind of how they can help and progress everyone forward. So
one of the things that I would thank you. I love talking. I love having these conversations with people I care about. I want, there's so many coming out stories. Like mine isn't genuinely that unique, in the sense that, like, I'm so glad that people are finding space day by day to own their own truth and to tell their story. I think my hope is that there is parts of this that resonate with people that are struggling to find a way forward, whether, whatever it might be. One of the things that I've learned, the unique thing about my world is that, I grew up in the way that I did, and I've found myself living in the most liberal cities in the US. And I've changed a whole lot. My world is way different. One of the things that I would say, that I've learned, and as you're looking to have conversations with people that may not have the same perspective that you do, if it's like, coming out is, to yourself at first, or at least it was to me. I had to actually admit to myself that this is who I was, and that was hard enough. But once you start having these conversations, the reason why you're in a closet is because of the fear of perception of the people around you, and maybe their inability to relate or to accept you. And what I've learned is that because I've had such a wide variety of experiences in life, I've traveled a lot, I've lived in these different cities. So when I go home to Oklahoma, I love my family. I love the people there. But I've learned a different language. It's almost like I'm bilingual, and, it's like going into, Mexico as an English speaker and expecting people to just speak my language, just demanding that they know what I'm talking about and use all the slang and expect everybody to keep up. When I go home to my family, it's kind of the same way. I have to recognize that I've learned two languages. I know how to speak, conservative Christian. I know how to speak redneck growing up in Oklahoma. I know how to live and exist in that culture. And I have a fondness for it because that's how I grew up. And I have to go into, I think we have to go into situations like that. If you expect to have a meaningful conversation with your expectations down, and to go in as the person that is willing to put yourself on the same level as somebody else and to speak their language and to draw them into a conversation versus expect them to jump to where you are without the years of experience that you've had to get you where you are. It may seem like it just automatically, you are who you are just automatically, but it took you years to become that person. And the people around you haven't had the same experiences. And so I think there has to be a level of patience and forgiveness to the people around you as they have to now have this conversation with themselves about how to react. When I wrote that post on Facebook, half of the reason I wrote it was to remove the shame and expose this to the world so that my family is now openly, my parents are parents of a gay son, our extended family and their friends at church, everybody knows because I put it out there. And I think I wanted that. I wanted the opportunity to have a conversation in the open. But because that conversation is happening doesn't mean I expect them to lead it or to know how to have it. And so it's a lot on me to have conversations with people in our lives. Like one of the things I'd say is like, you're going to say some offensive things and it's okay. I know you mean well. I've had, years of, living around a variety of different people. I know how to have this conversation and you don't, and it's okay. I'll choose to be unoffendable for a moment and help walk you through the next phase.
Wow. So thought-provoking, and this concept of languages and not literal languages, but emotional languages. And just, I know what you mean. I mean, I grew up in small towns across America, Kansas and Wyoming, and then Arizona, and I'd say fairly conservative family. But I slip back into that too sometimes, and speaking to kind of certain people in my family it's so helpful to know multiple languages, and if we could all maybe learn them within our own country, right. Imagine, and it's kind of also emotional intelligence, but at play here, but teach each other the various languages. So, wow, how does life look differently? How has this changed other aspects of your life? And so let's just start there. That's a big one.
Well, living in LA and being here, geographically, things changed. Emotionally, things changed. Socially, things changed. So I had an opportunity to really start again and build the life that I wanted. And because of that, because I made the choices that I've made and that I am out and I'm able to not worry about what anyone thinks about it, I will say that life is different, and I'm so much lighter as a person, I guess physically and just my personality. When I went back and visited San Francisco, everybody that sees me says, "You are so different. Oh my gosh, it's good to see you happy again." There was a weight for the last, the previous 3 years on me that really made me a very, very serious person. But yeah, I think I'm always grateful for opportunities to be around people that can quickly go below the surface. I think anyone listening here, regardless of how successful they are, we have a deep need for that sense of community and that sense of being understood and being known that is really, really difficult to do from a distance. And, when we don't feel like we're known and we look around and we don't feel like people really understand what's going on at the core, and maybe we're becoming depressed and you know it, you sense it, but you're not paying attention to it. No one's in your life to call it out. And, you're not putting healthy things out online, and you're not acting in healthy ways that are going to, help other people. I think you're so right that we need and are all looking for this opportunity and these chances to be known and to have our story be heard. And those opportunities are so few and far between, I think, as you get older and as there's more of a pressure on your life to be successful, to be impactful, to be, have your life together. And that vulnerability that it takes to really let someone in and say, it's actually not okay. I'm actually not doing well is really, really difficult. And I wish I had the answer as to how to make that a reality if you don't have it. But I do, like, who knows what would have happened if my friend hadn't like asked me if everything was okay and like, hey, I saw you on this app. Are you like, tell me what's going on, and had the courage to say that. Or, if you find yourself that in this position where you're waiting on someone to ask you, because I think had someone asked me before, I would have probably denied it, like in San Francisco, I certainly would have. So the timing was right. The person was right. But I really wish, I could have found a way to be healthy, years earlier, but, thank goodness that, I'm at the place that I'm at now, and it comes with its own struggles. You get your heart broken for the first time at 34. And you're calling up all your friends going, okay, how do you go through this? Like, what is wrong with my brain? and it's like, I didn't go through this at 17. And like, oh, I haven't eaten today and I can't sleep. And like, yeah, that's heartbreak. It's a thing that people go through. Okay, it's going to be okay. So, each step of the way comes with its own challenges, but I certainly take these challenges above being alone and lonely and disconnected and depressed. So,
and speaking of kind of mental health, how do you keep your mind healthy?
You'll love this. I use Headspace every day.
You do? I promise I did not ask him to say that, everyone.
Yeah, I know. I was excited. I've gotten to know the guys over there. They're over in Santa Monica, and I live in Venice. And my neighbor actually is one of the designers for them. And so
they're awesome. I've
they're so
spent
good.
some time in their office and gotten to know not only Andy's been on the show, but a bunch of the crew, and it's a pretty special place.
Yeah, it's one of the more important things that's being built right now, and I really, really think that companies like them need to have all the opportunity to succeed. I was just in San Francisco for a nonprofit event for a group called Bring Change to Mind that are really addressing the stigma behind mental health, brain disease, depression, suicide. And I think for me, I wish I was having this conversation, 3 years ago, and I'm glad that we are now, where, there needs to be these moments to where you can check in with yourself and understand the state of where your brain is at, and without judgment, be able to know when things are getting out of control. Mental health, had I not had developed a health regimen where I now enjoy running. If you would have asked 28-year-old Lane if he would ever enjoy running, he would have just laughed at you. If you asked 33-year-old Lane, he would have laughed at you. But because I have these outlets of like getting outdoors and exercising, like I just, you laugh at me if you want, but going to things like SoulCycle and putting these things that bring my brain out of its spiraling and make me focus on something that I can really pour a lot of energy into.
I totally the brain spiral. My best friend and I, we will text each other and say, going through a shame spiral right now, catch me. And it's just this moment of like self-realization. But good to hear that. I love that you use Headspace. And I think when navigating through some really difficult, either whether it's conversations that you need to have with yourself or with other people, it's such a tool. It really is. So is there anything that you've been thinking about doing that now that you kind of have this momentum, you have a formula for tackling big stuff, that you want to do, that it's time to tell yourself, okay, this is happening and why not now?
Yeah, actually. So we mentioned earlier, a lot of the reason how I got here is I've really been lucky to find people like Scott Harrison at Charity Water and Neil. And I've had the opportunity to work with them and underneath them. And I've never really stepped out to do my own public thing. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But I've had this idea for a little while. And I think a lot of us are saying this phrase, but after the election, it's like, oh yeah, the lights came back on and we've got work to do sort of mode.
Right.
I've had this idea for a little while, and it has to do with the story that we've been telling this whole time, which is, I am really fortunate to have the set of experiences and that I have the exposure to ideas and the opportunities to bring me to where I'm at now. And I think as I look back on my upbringing in Oklahoma and the journey away from that, I think every step of the way, I unconsciously was removing myself from that narrative. I lost my accent, so I wouldn't be associated with a accent at the time that I thought sounded uneducated. I didn't go back home very much. I don't talk to my friends from home. And by the time November rolled around, I found myself really removed from this culture that I actually grew up in and know how to navigate, knew a lot about. And, at the end of a year of a lot of transformation for me, I looked at my experience and I thought, like, how do I make sure that everybody has an opportunity to do this? What was it about who I am and what I've gone through that has allowed me to change so rapidly and pursue like a healthy lifestyle like this? I want to replicate this, and what does it take and how quickly can you do it? And so I had this idea. This is, I don't know, I feel like I can say it out loud because I really do want to do this. I think
now's the time. Why not now?
Yeah, it's exactly. Should have a show called that. I think it's time for people like myself that grew up in places that would be, considered, flyover states or, middle America, not LA, New York, San Francisco, to take the experiences that we have and offer those back to the places that we came from, and with not the intent of, changing people's minds that they're wrong, but really to offer people the opportunity to be healthy and to have new experiences. And so my thought is I really would love to rethink sort of a YMCA for next generation, to build our next generation of community centers in third tier markets to where people can come in, build community, co-working space, get in shape, pursue mindfulness, meditation, to learn about nutrition, and to be exposed to new ideas, new narratives, new experiences in a safe environment. So I think as I look at what I think we need as a culture, it is this opportunity for people outside of, say Venice, where there's a yoga studio in every corner, to, my family that lives in Oklahoma, that if you say yoga, they think, oh, that's that like mystic, like hippie BS, and wouldn't walk in. I don't mean to like talk down about it, but it's real. It's just a different language, like I said, right? So I think bringing these experiences, meditation, same thing, and giving people the opportunity to be exposed to new content and bring the best speakers in the world to come address, the communities. And so I'm toying around with this idea, and that is, I think one of the things that if I could combine my experience as a pastor in the past, as a fundraiser in the tech community, as a builder of charities and social enterprise, and as a guy that's had the last year of experience of getting in shape, being healthy, and pursuing, my own happiness for the first time and seeing the benefits of that. I think this could be sort of the intersection of all the things that I'm passionate about, and to see these things pop up all over the US and see what happens when people are given the tools to unstuck themselves and to find new ways forward, new pathways forward, I think could be really, really fun.
Wow, brilliant and so timely. And if you were to have, offered up this idea, and not just idea, because you're officially green lighting it right now, right? A couple years ago, it might have been before its time. I think you have all the right components, Lane, to make this happen. And your business sense, and how many companies have you been a part of that have been acquired? And you've got that dialed in. You've got the tech. You've got the relationships and the social side of the social giving and entrepreneurship side of things, and the relatability and the experience. And it's smart, super smart. It's like YMCA reform in a way, but much, much cooler. But it's very, very interesting. What would be the very first step?
Yeah, the thesis, and I think this goes right along with, the whole idea of why you're doing this podcast, is that I don't think people change the course of their life or change their mind about anything meaningful unless two things happen. One, you're presented with a catastrophic situation. You either eat healthy or you die, right? Some diagnosis, some sort of scenario where you are forced to change, or really bad things happen. Or you're presented with new opportunities, new information, new narratives, new ideas in a safe environment. And I think sometimes we think that safe environment is your Facebook page, where it's like, I'm going to say these things and the world's going to change. And it just, that's not what happens. And we also know that, the coastal worlds, the, middle America worlds are more separate now than they ever have been. And there are very few safe spaces for these, ideologies to be in the same room without threatening each other. I think the way that you're pursuing your content and the people that you're bringing on, the conversations that you're having, are definitely the types of conversations that I want more people to be able to listen to, but may not find you yet because maybe you exist outside of the world that they've created for themselves. You're not inside of their safe space yet. And whether it's companies like Headspace or Drive Market or some of these amazing companies that are still struggling how to find the safe space to introduce their amazing products into a world that hasn't learned to listen to them yet. I think it could be really, really meaningful territory for these ideals to coexist together and for people to learn from each other.
Smart. Let me know how I can help. And first step, sharing it in a way you've now said it.
Just
right?
saying
it out loud.
Okay,
there you go. So your friends will listen and then ask you, okay, how's that going? And you're like, oh, yeah.
What's funny is I know how to do this for everybody else. When you're doing it for yourself, it's a lot harder. So I know the first thing I need to do is to get over the fact that I don't have a name for it and just keep going. It doesn't need a name.
That's the fun part. Anyway, I'll help you pull that out of your
we'll
brain.
have that day. I need you to do that. I'm going to hold you to that. Okay. And then, it's a capital intensive exercise, and I'm going to need some financial backers behind it that believe in me and believe in the opportunity. So, the first step is actually putting a basic pitch deck together and putting some of these meetings with some of our very influential friends that I think would be excited to go along for the ride and see what's out there. And maybe it's not exciting. Maybe there's already a thing that's out there that's, better suited to fill this gap. But as of now, I think this is the way forward for me. And the why not now moment that I've been dealing with for the last month has been this conversation right here.
Love it. Oh, I have lots of ideas and thoughts and people who
sure you do.
I think would be really interested in talking this through with you, and myself included. But okay, so rapid fire round. Here we go. Favorite book and what you're reading right now. And after doing my social snooping, I realize you've just finished Hillbilly Elegy, as have I. But is there anything else that you're reading right now?
Can I say the F word on your show?
Sure. I just have to mark it when I upload it as having a cuss word in it. But you can go for it, and I will mark it happily.
Yeah, exactly. So I am reading this fun book with the title. It's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which I'm a little ways into it. I'm liking it so far, and maybe just as a thing that's on my shelf that I see, it's even just a reminder of just keep moving forward. But this year has been a amazing year of reading really great books, and I have the whole list of things that have been really, really important to me.
What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night is the pace at which things are changing and navigating new territory. I really have to be careful about addressing my own insecurities and allowing myself to be a little bit messy. And it's okay throughout a time of such rapid change. So I can be really hard on myself, and that really comes to bear kind of at night as I'm, closing down my day and like thinking about what I didn't get accomplished, but working on that.
And pirates or ninjas? Who's tougher?
Gosh, I mean, pirates have to be. I mean, can you imagine living at sea all that time with just like a bunch of gross people? That'd be a rough life. Listen, I mean, in a fight, ninjas are going to win for sure. But man, yeah, you have to be pretty tough to be on the pirate life.
So you just delineated winning a battle toughness from just everyday being tough. That's interesting. That's really interesting. I think a lot of people would agree with you on that one, but I just love the answers and the rationale, because it's fantasy kind of, but it's not. You can back it up with some facts and some opinions. And for the final question, what advice would you give to your younger self? And this could be the 32-year-old, 33-year-old. This could be 19-year-old Lane. It could be 12. It could be 2 years ago. What advice would you give to your younger self? And you can choose the age.
I would have to go back to, let's say, about 20 years old, when I was still working at churches, and I was teaching, and I was leading large groups of college students way too early. Someone gave me a microphone way before I should have had one, and I spoke really arrogantly and authoritatively. And I'm really glad that YouTube wasn't as big as it is now back then, and everything wasn't recorded, because I'd be screwed. But I would just go back to that person and tell him, you're going to be wrong about most things, most of your life. And they're okay for right now, but don't hold on to them so tightly. You don't have to be right about everything. I think that was, if there's anything that's held me back, and if there's anything that's really like caused pain in my life, it's been my stubbornness and my need at a younger age to be right. It comes from how I grew up. And it comes from sort of the religious setup of conservative Christianity, where you can't really be wrong or else everything falls apart. But I would go back and tell him that you're going to be wrong about a lot of things, and when the time comes, you're gonna be a little frustrated with yourself that you were so arrogant and so authoritative about the way that you believe.
Wow. That's pretty timely, especially now that we add social media into the mix, and when you didn't have it back then. But it's easier to look back and find what came out of that megaphone now, and very powerful. Thank you so much, Lane. I could talk to you for hours and hours. And I think about the Why Not Now moment when I had one of our mutual friends connected us, and it was Paul Young, and he said, hey, talk to Lane. He has this idea and this opportunity for you to maybe go to Ethiopia. And I think it was a few weeks away. We were sitting at South by Southwest, and you mentioned it to me, and it was the wrong time for me to go. I had a million other so important things going on, and thank God I went. Thank God that I met you and went, because not only did that whole trip really change my path, but we wouldn't be having this conversation if we hadn't connected. So thank you.
Well, thank you for saying yes and coming with us. That was such an important trip. And I agree. I am so grateful that our paths continue to cross, and that we get to have such meaningful conversations like this.
In order to have a new life, you have to give up your old. That's pretty powerful, I'd say. Yeah, conversation with Lane, I took so many things away from it. And one of the things that really hit me was when we ask ourselves the question, why not now? A lot of times we just think of that as a rhetorical question and we don't really answer the question. But if you're asking, if you're wanting to tackle your own why not now, that's a good place to start, is literally why? Why not? Answer the questions, list out the reasons why. And I think that that's a very logical and kind of literal place to start, but it's a good one. So you might consider doing that. Next week, I'm going to revive the Shelfie Club. It's going through a bit of a renovation. I'm excited to share it with you, some of the changes we're making, and have a good week. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your why not now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?